out, and away we go.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to F1 True North, the Canadian Formula One podcast. Here with a full crew, Drew, Thomas, Edward, and we are recapping Imola. Yes, we're back in Europe, back to, a traditional track, one that I actually really like seeing, because I feel like we've seen a lot of street circuits. We've seen a lot of like these newer tracks, and just getting back to Italy, back to Imola, a little shot of nostalgia. Let's run through the race really quickly, get your thoughts on it. Drew, you want to kick us off?
I actually really liked it. I think that, there was a big switch up in the grid, and I'm not sure if that's because of it being track specific. It was, a little bit tighter. We heard Lando kind of talking about, with these new F1 cars, like the dimensions of them, that it's very difficult to pass. So I thought it was very interesting to see, some of these drivers kind of using some older tactics to get around other drivers. And, with one DRS zone, I thought it was something different. Like you mentioned in the intro that, we'd had a lot of street circuits. We've had a lot of new build style tracks, and it was nice to go back to something a little more nostalgic. Now, that being said, is it something, long term that I'd like to see? Because, these new cars are a little bit wider, and that does make it more difficult. But I thought the race was fantastic. It was nice to have Lando up there on the podium again, and I think that if Piastri had kind of kept it together in qualifying, and his race engineers guys were giving him a heads up that Hulkenberg was coming, or Magnussen was coming around the corner, that he wouldn't have got that 3-place grid penalty. Right. And I think he would have definitely been up there. And we're going to touch on this a little bit later, but I think McLaren's looking really spicy. Those upgrades are looking absolutely fire. And now that Piastri had the full set upgrades, he was looking really good. Obviously you had your back markers. Obviously, something happened with Albon, and he got a 10-second penalty after already being a lap something down. So that was kind of ironic. But yeah, you know what? I thought it was a very entertaining race. It was nice to have like a standard weekend for once. We had the qualies, and we had the race on Sunday at a normal time, and free practice went off without a hitch. It was just very nice. Weather was pleasant. There was no, outside influences on the race. It was awesome. And I really enjoyed it. It was good. What do you got on that one, Thomas?
For being one of my favorite tracks, I found the race to be okay-ish. Max Verstappen won again. I thought we're definitely going to see something different, whether that be the McLaren or the Ferrari boys. Near the end, it got very, very spicy. That was the last 10-15 minutes were very, very enjoyable to watch. How Lando kept on pushing towards Max. I think if the race had 5 more laps in it, I truly believe Lando probably would have got number 1 spot. The qualities were interesting. The sprint was the qualifying were interesting. Some surprises in regards to Aston Martin. How Stroll actually was doing okay-ish for how he normally does, and Mr. Fernando Alonso was doing shit. The upgrades, again for Aston Martin seem like they're going backwards a little bit for Alonso. For McLaren and Ferrari, they did pretty good. I'm happy Lando was second. Ferrari boys, and they've been doing a pretty decent job as well. But I expected a little bit more oomph, I guess, to the race. It was a little bit too standard for me. Wanted a little bit more action. Edward, what you got?
Well, for me, it was I was a little bit nostalgic with with the whole Senna thing, and when Vettel actually did a lap in Senna's car. That's like the highlight for me, and that's sad to say because just like you, Tomas, like the entire race was just like, until the last 10 laps. Those last 10 laps when Lando was chasing down Verstappen, and just kind of shows like there's a really big difference now, and the entire McLaren team owning up to what they said last season, wherein they were going to take the fight to Red Bull, and this is the second race, so I'm not going to say that it was a fluke, just like from Miami. but this is the second race now that we show that the pace is there. Their speed and their willingness to do anything and like trust everyone in the team in order to get results. Like Lando, being the fantastic driver that he is, he also leans on his engineers to see what settings to do, how to take the corner, or how to set up the car properly so that based on the current situation that he's dealing with, that they would again try to get as much out of it as possible. So for me, it was just Senna was the thing, but yeah, those last 10 laps, Red Bull, be careful. McLaren's coming.
So it's interesting hearing this chat. I saw a meme or something on Instagram after the race where it's this person who was like really excited for the first lap, and then they essentially like slowly fall asleep over like laps 2 to 53, and then all of a sudden at the end, the last 10 laps, like that's the exciting part. And I'm thinking about it because obviously, I opened this episode talking about how it was great to be back in Italy at one of these like classic nostalgic tracks where you're looking out, even just visually, you look at it and it looks like a proper racetrack. You don't have buildings around, you don't have skyscrapers, like you have trees and a river because it's basically like in the middle of the country, in the middle of nowhere. But for that, we get racing with these cars, at least, which seems a little bit less competitive, less inspired, right? And just now I was thinking, are these traditional classic racetracks really built for a modern Formula One car anymore? Right? We'll look at like obviously Monaco is an anomaly because no one can pass in Monaco, right? But you look at Imola, you look at Spa, you look at Monza coming up. Like these are all very traditional tracks, and they were originally built for Formula One cars of 30, 40 years ago. And now obviously the speed, the downforce, everything has come so far to the point where do they pose enough of a challenge in their current forms for these cars to where they create enough opportunities for overtakes and where they create enough opportunities for close racing, right? Are the engineers of these teams so far ahead of where these tracks are right now, where so many of these corners that you would used to brake for or lift off, like now they are flat out corners, right? So at what point do these tracks become less competitive, and at what point do we start looking forward to tracks like the Miamis and the Vegases and these more modern tracks that are maybe more suited for a modern Formula One car? Just a thought. I don't know if anyone wants to share or has any input
Well, I
on
think
that.
you're bang on with that, Walker. Like, I kind of mentioned it briefly too. I just think that like it does pose challenges for these drivers, but not in the same way that it posed challenges for them before in terms of like on track racing. Like I think it poses challenges of, are these cars too big, too heavy, and too fast from, comparing them to the cars of yesterday that were, much smaller and didn't weigh as much, right? So they were designed for a completely different car. And so I just think that it needs to be thought about that if the regulations are going to be changing, that like the cars need to be able to compete on track. And like, like you mentioned, Monaco's the anomaly, but that's also another perfect like patient zero example of like, this is not a track that's built for modern day cars, because they did used to pass in Monaco in a big way, and now they just can't. And so, that does need to be a thought going forward, that like, some of these places that we visit, like, do new tracks need to be created, or do we have to start visiting, tracks that are more for the modern day car? I think that's a great point. And I think, F1 needs to really think about that. And maybe that's the shift of why they're, going to the Miamis and they're going to the Las Vegas. And like, I've heard they're proposing a track in Bangkok in Thailand, and they're also proposing a track in Chicago. Like these are all very real things that might happen over the next few years. And I don't hate the idea, because I think that it needs to be a thought. Like if the cars are this heavy and this wide and this long, how wide do the tracks need to be? And that needs to be thought out. So I think it's a great point too.
I think on the flip side, when you start, obviously this was a big weekend for Senna and the commemorative events that happened. And you look at his car that Vettel was driving around, right? And you look at any of these classic cars and you compare them. I'm sure we've all seen the comparisons online, just the size difference of these cars, right? Like these modern cars are absolutely massive, right? And again, looking at what the mandate of Formula One is, which is like the best drivers, the most technically advanced cars, you know, at what point does that start to become a detriment to the sport itself? And I'm not saying it has been, just kind of putting it out there, right? At what point do they develop it so far that, you know, they're no longer suited for the tracks we have here? And would there ever be a call to return to a smaller, lighter chassis, assuming you can kind of maintain all the safety aspects, right? But would that ever be something that they bring into the regulations? Who knows? Maybe 15, 20 years from now, we'll see something come in like that. But for now, it's just an interesting place to look forward to a race like Imola and then realize that it's boring because they can't really do as much on track as you would like them to do. Speaking of not doing much on track, let's move on to Ferrari, who seem to be having like an exceptionally average season. And I don't even know it's average in a bad way, because all of a sudden Leclerc's second in the standings. They're kind of hanging around in the constructors, but they seem to be doing it very quietly. Outside of Sainz, the first few races where they were, you know, but I feel like more of that noise was about the fact that he didn't have a contract and that it was like vengeance and he was just going to like crush everyone. But, you know, for the last few races, he's been a little bit quiet, and so is Ferrari. Where do they fit in moving into the middle of the season? Are they a legit threat to Red Bull and now McLaren, or are they just gonna like wade in the middle here? Ed?
Well, I mean, I would say that they are. I wouldn't say overwhelming or underwhelming. I would say they're whelming. Reason I say that is because like they're at that certain point wherein they are competing, but not to the extent that they're really gonna try to take the fight to Red Bull and to McLaren as well. One thing that comes to mind immediately was how Alan Prost actually done his racing. Like he always just did whatever was the best for him to win the championship. If it means coming in fifth, he'll come in fifth. So I think at this point where Ferrari is at, they're going to try to gain as much points. They're going to try to get as much points for drivers and the constructors, and then keep on compounding that. Have Red Bull and McLaren kind of like duke it out, and then at the last moment, swoop in, take the championship. Who knows? Like they have been quiet. Don't get me wrong. They're not as like exciting, or they're not as hungry for it from the way I see it from the past few races. But then again, they could be methodical about what they're doing, and they might come out a champion, or they might come out a winner at the end of the season. So we won't know until like we get a few more races down. I mean, Monaco is going to be an interesting point of view for qualies to see if they do have the pace, specifically in a track like that. Tomas, what do you think about it?
I agree with both of you. They have been quiet for the past couple of races. My theory is, or what I have in my head is, they're kind of like the silent warrior. You know, they're doing their talking on the track. It might not be anything like super like wow right now, but I think they're just gonna continue doing their thing. And I mean, like we all just said, Leclerc's number two. Do I think he's a threat to Red Bull or a possible McLaren? To Red Bull, no, I don't think so. But yeah, I think McLaren has to watch out for that. You know, Sainz had a couple great weekends. He's a little bit again on the quieter side now, but you know, it just takes one weekend till you surprise your enemies. So yeah, I think they're a serious threat to McLaren. I think they're staying in the shadows for now, doing what needs to be done, and I think we might be pleasantly surprised in the later races. Drew?
Yeah, I think, you know, Ferrari is it's in a really tricky place right now because they're in like this whole kind of rebuild into a super team phase, right? And off track, they're trying to acquire as many key personnel as possible because I think they're trying to go into these new regs with a super team. And, next year they're going to have Lewis Hamilton and they're hiring some technical directors and they're pulling people from Red Bull. And obviously Adrian Newey is a super hot topic because he's been seen gallivanting and chatting with Freddie Vasseur. And, I think Freddie's trying to put together a huge brain behind everything that Ferrari's doing. And, very quietly, like you guys had mentioned, Ferrari's becoming a team that's solid, which, historically over the last few years, like they've just been having mess up after mess up, like can't get team orders together, plan A, B, C, D, X, Z, Y, like who even knew what was going on there for the last couple of years. Freddie Vasseur's got in there and he's, methodically putting people in the right places to get the jobs done. And when you look at somebody like Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz, like those are two fantastic drivers. You can say what you want. Carlos is going to get replaced with Lewis Hamilton next year. Again, another super solid driver with a pedigree like nobody else. And they're just kind of putting together a car that can, pull off a championship victory. And I think that that's going to take time, right? Like that's just the reality is like once you have that team together, that will very quickly become a reality. And, just like Mercedes of last year, they were just consistent, right? Like Mercedes pulled off no crazy wins. There was no awesomeness coming out of Mercedes last year, but they were consistent and both of their guys were getting in the points every single week. And that's what I think Ferrari's doing. And like, obviously you get a couple of wins, a couple of podiums, and you keep those two guys in the top 5 every single week or top 6 or top 7 every single week, and you will win, right? As long as you don't have any mess ups, right? What I think is an opportunity for McLaren is when they have weekends like this to capitalize on it. And it's unfortunate that Piastri got pushed down a little bit because I very much think that podium would have been full of McLaren. And I see McLaren and Ferrari being the battle to watch this year. Those are the two that are going to be interesting to see in the Constructors' Championship, just like it was down to the final race last year between Ferrari and Mercedes. So that's what I'm kind of excited about. And I think Ferrari they have the solid base to build from. The foundation is there. And I just think that they need a couple of key upgrades and they're going to take the fight to McLaren. And, obviously we've seen the pack get bunched up a little bit between McLaren, Ferrari, and Red Bull, right? Like that, they're not running away with it anymore. The fact that we're not giving an automatic win to Max Verstappen and that we're taking an over-under on how many seconds he's going to win by, which let's bring this up right now. I'd like to mention Walker and I took the under 5-second mark and we got it. So just want to put that out there. We both got points on the board this time. But yeah, it's like, the fact that we're talking about, Max not winning by 25 seconds is absolutely brilliant. And I think that that Ferrari and McLaren are the two teams to do it. So I'm excited about it.
So is the consensus here that Ferrari is a sleeping giant or that they're just sleeping right now?
Yeah, it's big snooze. Snooze fest.
Snooze fest? Yeah, because to me, when I think of Ferrari right now, it reminds me of like Valtteri Bottas in his Mercedes days. Like solid, always kind of there, hasn't found a way to be remarkable yet. Right. And that's kind of, to me, that sums up their season so far. And you talk about Leclerc and you talk about Piastri. Do we want to touch on his podium? Because, for what it's worth, obviously Piastri got the grid penalty, but to be said, like, he wasn't as effective as getting through the field as you would have thought he was given his quali pace. So, is that a little asterisk on Leclerc's podium, or?
Yeah, I think so. I don't think that Ferrari had an ability to pass cars. Like they were just maintaining.
Did McLaren?
I don't think many people did, though. That's the problem. There wasn't a ton of passing. Was the whole idea, right?
So you're basing it based on whoever is going to qualify in second is going to finish second.
In theory,
essentially,
yeah,
or a third or whatever it is.
Yeah. And I think Monaco is going to be the same thing, right? And on Monaco, talking about that, getting closer and closer to it, that it's going to come down to, it's not just the car here. There's a comfort factor because these guys are like, it's a different horse. Like these guys have to be very confident and very comfortable with it. And I personally think the two Ferrari guys have a little bit of a heads up on McLaren guys. Like I think that the experience that LeClerc and Sainz have will just give them that little bit of edge over top of that. Like look at Fernando Alonso last year, who's been to Monaco dozens of times, right? And now look how close he was to Max last year. Like that was almost an Alonso pole, right? So I think that experience has a lot to do with Monaco, and I think that that's where Ferrari might have an edge against McLaren this weekend, even if the car's not as fast.
Quickly, before we move on from Ferrari, I'd like everyone to take a turn saying Charles's last name. I just want to see how this goes because I'm fucking confused. Drew,
Leclerc.
Ed,
LeClerc.
Thomas.
LeClerc.
So who says Leclerc? Because I hear that all the time on TV. I don't know if it's a British pronunciation. I don't get it, but
Yeah, no, I don't say this. The second C is silent.
it's official. Can we
I
just
think
create
so.
like a F1 True North official pronunciation?
Yeah, I think we have a French whole like population here in Canada. I think we have a very educated opinion.
What else can we say in French? Anything?
Bonjour. Let's have gas.
I don't think speaking English with a French accent counts, but
Close enough.
moving on. So we had Mercedes. They were kind of mid-pack, nowhere. Are they really making any progress right now, or are they just kind of, have they found their place as that fourth constructor?
I got a friend, and her brother-in-law works at the Aero team as an engineer. And from my understanding, from what she said, is that they're like just almost 100% focused on the 2026 regs already. Like they're not even looking at their 2025 car. Like they've skipped the next year and a half, and they're just like, it's whatever. Obviously, they still have to fight and bring upgrades and do all that stuff. But like as far as money, time, and effort's concerned, they're already on to the next regs because they've accepted their place in the world, and that being 5th and 6th place on the grid pretty consistently. And that's super sad watching like Lewis Hamilton. Like he's not a guy that takes defeat very easy. I'm sure this is probably burning him up inside. But yeah, as far as I'm concerned, like if Mercedes gets in the top 4, that's the best that they can get.
I was going to say
Drew.
5th and 6th seems very very generous, but
That's
what were you gonna say,
aggressive.
Thomas?
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, Drew, that must not only hurt Lewis Hamilton, but must hurt you as well, being a Mercedes fanboy.
I like F1. All right. I'll cheer whoever I want to. And right now I'm cheering for Lando because I like orange.
I'm not gonna lie, it hurts me. I'll take that. I'll take that burn all day long. Well, same with Ed. Don't single out Drew here. We're all Lewis fans.
Yeah.
Except for you, Thomas.
Exactly. That's right. Not
You can
all.
take your Valtteri and enjoy your 17th place, or whatever he came
You know
in.
what? I shall. I will. Okay. He's just having a bad year.
For
That
4
said-
years in a row.
That said, there were some. He did have some killer social media this weekend. I don't know if you saw him.
He's a
He always
beauty.
does.
Yeah.
Like, he is the perfect match for that steak brand. So I think they kind of have a good partnership there. Just wrapping up, Imola, Stroll got some points. Sonoda had another strong finish. Anything else of note you guys want to touch on before we move on to Monaco?
No, Yuki was what Drew said. Yuki had some serious good pace, and for some reason, Danny Rick cannot get a hold of that car and cannot perform as well as his teammate, or as well as we expect him to perform, which is kind of surprising because what we're seeing is Yuki can push the car, he can score points, but for whatever reason, Danny Rick just can't seem to grasp, which is sad because I like him as a driver. I think he's a good driver. I like him as a personality, but it's just kind of sad to see like he's almost in a way wasting his talent and his years essentially. That's what I just wanted to say.
Danny Rick hasn't been the same since like he got crushed as Max's partner, second driver. Like after that, like he's just never been the same. And then he's been bouncing around teams like somebody in the fucking homeless shelters or something. I don't know.
Wow.
like-
You were stuck there. Right? You were trying to
Yeah.
think of something funny,
Homeless
and then
shelter.
you're picking on the homeless.
You know, it's called unhoused.
Is that the current term?
The politically correct is the unhoused.
Do you also refer to them as the untoothed, or is that?
See, now you're
Unshowered?
picking on them. Now you're picking.
We'll edit that part out.
Yeah, that's all coming out.
No, it's staying. What are we talking about? Okay, moving on to Monaco. Amazing track, historic track, one of my favorites. It shouldn't be though. It should be my least favorite race of the year because the actual race itself is absolutely boring. But the pump, the whole everything else around the race is what makes it my favorite. What are we looking forward to? We're gonna do the over under. So we'll get to that in a second. But what are we looking forward to? Is it going to be another Red Bull win? Are we going to see Ferrari come to the table? Is the homeboy Charles going to finally show up and win a race there? What do we think is going to happen? Drew?
It's all going to come down to quality, man. Like, who do I see? I think we're going to get a LeClerc podium. I think that should happen, assuming he doesn't eat it or no one crashes into him. I think that'll be like it's not even a bold prediction. That's just a prediction. I think we're going to see Leclerc on a podium, and I think that I think Carlos Sainz might join him. And then I'm just obviously assuming that the top step is Max. But yeah, I think that like we're going to have a Ferrari banger this weekend, boys. I just don't think I think McLaren's car is faster, but I think Lando and Oscar just don't have the experience in Monaco.
Well, I'm going to say you're wrong, Walker. You said it's going to be one of the most boring races. I'm going to say this specific race is going to be one of the best races that we're going to see. I do not think Max is going to be on podium at all. I'm going to go with, Alonso probably on the podium, and Lando Norris and one of the Ferrari boys. Just a thought and just a prediction. And yeah, it's going to be a good race.
Just a feeling,
Just a feeling, not a bad race like
Just
you
a
said,
feeling.
Walker. Just a feeling.
Okay.
I don't know. For me, it has to be the only two things that I'm looking forward to is good quality and rain. Because when it rains, it's always fun. There's so much things that happen when it rains in Monaco. Also looking forward to who's gonna crash first, who's gonna crash the most. We all know who that is. I'm not gonna say it. I'll let you guys think about that. Put it in
Lance
Discord.
Does
Put
it
in the
rhyme with
comments.
dance roll?
But yeah, like I agree. I kind of agree with Walker on this one. Like the past few years that I've been just watching Monaco, it's just like you get to quali and then that's it. Now what? Okay, I can turn it off and wait for the replay and then see what happens. So there has to be like an extenuating circumstance that destroys the whole order of things for it to be really interesting at this point.
So rain,
Personally.
essentially.
So,
Yeah.
Ed's holding out for like an earthquake or something,
Yeah,
or
mudslide.
like a tsunami.
Let's
come
not
in and,
ha-
like,
let's
just
not
wash
kill
out the
Version
people.
of a natural disaster.
Let's not kill people. No tsunamis, no earthquakes. They said it, I didn't. I just want rain. Torrential downpour.
That
Well, there was
could
rain last
kill
year,
people.
right?
There was rain. Yeah, there was rain.
There was rain,
Yeah.
and I think Max still won, didn't he?
Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
he did.
Yep.
Yeah, he did.
So I was going to do an over-under on Max's lead out front, but now Thomas threw it for me. He just threw me off because now I don't know if we do the over-under on Max leading or the over-under on where he finishes. So how do we want to approach this? Over-under on where he finishes or the lead? And we just write off Thomas's opinion.
Ouch.
I want to do another different over under. Let's do an over under on Logan Sargent being the one who crashes.
Well, okay. So how are you doing the over under though? Like 5 minutes into like FP1. Like, how are you going to frame this?
FP1.
Fucking Ed and his FP1s. No,
Okay.
I'm talking about in the race. Like we're talking about bringing out safety cars. Like have to like get the crane, pick up the Williams. Everyone sees the flat plate underneath the Williams.
Mhm.
You know, just like before.
Okay, so let's start up front. Is Max going to start higher or lower, over or under third?
Over on that.
Thomas?
Over.
What do you mean over? You just said he wasn't going to be on the podium.
I did, but I'm slowly going to say over.
What?
This guy's the
Doesn't
worst.
make any sense.
This guy bets on red and black.
You
This
just
is
went
why you
with-
don't even-
You just gave like the boldest prediction of the season, and now you're like, oh, I don't know, maybe I'm
I'm going to be 100% right.
okay.
This is the worst.
What?
It's going off the
Okay.
rails.
Hold on. Okay,
Let's
stop.
do it.
I need to reframe this quote. Okay. Is Max gonna finish over or under 7 seconds ahead of the rest of the field? 7 seconds, over or under,
Under.
implying that he wins.
Yeah, I'm gonna take the under.
Over.
Under.
I'm gonna take the under as well.
Okay.
Um,
That was a successful one. That was
There
a
we go.
successful over
Yeah,
under.
that was good.
Thomas, you can't throw us off like that. Like, the whole reason we restructured the entire segment was because of your
Yeah.
dumbass comment, and now you go back on it. You gotta commit, man. You gotta
Yeah,
commit.
commit.
Deal with it.
Yeah, we are. And I'll deal with it tomorrow when I'm editing you. Fuck.
Okay.
Never love.
Do we want to go? Okay, so let's go over under on the first crash of the race. I'm not going to talk about drivers. We're just going to do first contact of the race with another car, with another driver, lap 3. Over or under?
Under.
Under.
Turn 1.
And I'm going to go over. I think they're all going to be
Nicey nice.
very, very polite. Kind of like Imola. It was actually surprising that no
It
one
was. Agreed.
no one got nailed on in Imola, but yeah, okay, we're going to go under. Prediction for the rest of the podium. Do we want to touch on 2 and 3? Who do we got? Charles and Lando?
No, I'm going Charles and Carlos. I'm going to
Charles,
Ferrari.
Carlos?
Yeah. Ferrari second and third step.
Ferrari 2, 3, yeah.
I'm gonna dive in McLaren 2-3. Lando and Piastri.
Lando
Thomas,
and
considering
Sainz.
that you're... Okay, I was going to say, considering your last original answers now are relevant, you're going to switch to Lando and Sainz?
For 2 and 3.
Okay, there we go. Fucking Thomas, man, what are we going to do with you, buddy?
Things just
What are we
work
gonna do with
over
you?
there.
All right.
Before we continue,
Yes.
I was just looking at the pronunciation of Charles Leclerc's name. So we were actually all wrong.
Oh, fact check
Uh,
here. I like this.
Yeah, I fact checked it. So apparently the second C is not silent, and there's 2 pronunciations according to Google. That for the American pronunciation, they actually pronounce the R, so it's LeClerc. But the British pronunciation does not pronounce the H, so it's LeClerc.
The age.
H
What
and
fucking
the
age?
R.
Sorry, the R. My
Oh,
bad.
the-
The R.
okay.
So it's
Leclerc or Leclerc?
yeah.
Leclerc.
That's according to Google. That's the
They're
first thing I
never
saw.
wrong.
They're never wrong.
No.
We'll never know.
Goggles always got the answers.
All right. Well, thanks for that, Ed. We'll just have to try and get Charles to confirm this. I'm sure when he sees this in the media reports, he's going to call in immediately to set the record straight. So we'll await his phone call. On to our newest segment. You want to do this one, Drew?
Yeah, we're
Hello.
gonna go to the mailbox, box. Okay, let's go. So our buddy Derek wrote in again and asked us to speculate on Max and if he does try to join Mercedes. Are they putting their future into him or into Kimi Antonelli? Do they run them both? That wouldn't end well. Basically, if they sign Max, does that mean they've abandoned the Antonelli plan?
It's a great question.
I think it's a great question.
That's a good question. Yeah.
Who wants to start us off here?
I'll go.
Okay. Go ahead.
If they do sign Max, I have a feeling that Antonelli is going to be more of like a Williams or a developing driver. That would mean that Toto does not have full confidence in Kimi Antonelli compared to what everyone in the media has been saying. Like, Toto missed out on Max before, and now that Kimi Antonelli looks like the second coming of Max Verstappen, too soon to say. And if they sign Max, then definitely not those good vibes and not the vote of confidence that we all expect Toto for Kimi Antonelli. But if that happens, then that's another shakeup in the grid all to itself. So we shall see. I mean, with the way things are going right now in Red Bull, lots of, the exit of Adrian Newey and other key figures within their team. Only time will tell. And it'll be interesting how that works, because we'll see how they match up in 2026 when Mercedes actually comes out with their developing car or their developed car compared to what they have right now. Drew, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, you know what? I just want to thank Derek for writing this in, but like I think we're gonna have to make a couple of assumptions, right? Like they try to sign Max Verstappen. Let's assume that they sign Max Verstappen. They're going to try to sign him for like a 3-5 year deal. They're going to want him for some time. They're not just going to have him as like a stopgap till Antonelli gets into play. So Antonelli would go to Williams, much like Ed said, and Max Verstappen would be there. But like, would they have to then remake the car, or would this be an opportunity to pay for someone like Max, get that driver, and then form that 2026 season, like I'd mentioned earlier, that they're focusing on, and just start building that whole new car under the new regs around Max? And then you got Georgie Porgy playing second fiddle again. And I think that would be the play, right? Like, let's just assume that, Mercedes does what they have to do in order to get Max to come on board, give him the money and make the promises. Because, there is a big shakeup in the back end of in Red Bull right now. And I think some of the instability that they've been showing is obviously not attractive to Max. He just wants to go there. He just wants to race and he just wants to win. And if you can't provide him all three of those things, then I just don't think he's interested. And I know Mercedes is not in their winning ways right now, but I think that they will be. And I think that those new regulations offer a lot of opportunity for Mercedes to jump back on top because, being a works team themselves, they do have a special sauce. And when the new regs came into place, the previous time during the Hamilton era, they took off with it. And that does show some promise and show some ability for Mercedes to do that. And I think Max, would absolutely smash it there. I think him and Toto would get on really well because all they want to do is race cars and win races and championships. So I don't know. Like I said, man, a really, really big shout out to Derek for sending in that question and, to speculate on Max Verstappen, but who knows what that's going to look like. What do you got on that one, Thomas?
I think I have a bit of a different approach. I think Mercedes is going to stick with Kimi Antonelli just because one thing that I just recently saw Max saying, essentially, he achieved all his goals. He just wants to continue improving and continue, bettering himself with the team that he's with, to my understanding. I really don't see him at this point in time. I don't see him going to Mercedes, even with the whole instability that's happening at Red Bull. I think he's going to continue being there and going to continue dominate, for the next year to 2 years for sure. Maybe, from 2026, that's a possibility. But right now, I do not see him going to Mercedes. But if Mercedes were to sign him, then I'm with you guys. I think then Kimi Antonelli would go to Williams, and what Drew said exactly, Mercedes would want to sign him long term, and not like a 1+1, but for a solid 3-4 years, I would assume.
So there's a couple of things here. Obviously, you have to figure out what to do with George, right? Because let's say they try and do both. Let's say they try and sign Max and they bring on Antonelli. A, where does that leave George? And B, I don't know how easy it is to be Max's teammate. To your point, Thomas, like he talks about, like he just wants to better the team and he's achieved all his personal goals. Does that mean he's going to go in there like Coach Max and like really take Kimi under his arm and show him the ways? I don't know if he has that in him right now. I think he would still want to just fucking crush this kid and just be like, I'm still like the alpha on this team and I am still the one to drive. So I think it's going to be, I don't think that is a viable option to bring them both into the team, and maybe that's where it's a Max and George kind of scenario for a while Kimi kind of cuts his teeth over at Williams. Because, as impressive as he's apparently been in his testing with Mercedes, it's been a very different car. It's a few years old now. And it's also, I think it's very different, putting some testing miles on an old car and racing like a full 24 race Formula One season with a top tier team and the pressure that comes with and all the other expectations, right? And despite how prodigal he might be, I think it still might serve him well to drive with a team like Williams where you can make mistakes, right? And you can kind of learn without the same kind of pressure that maybe you have at a Mercedes. Anyways, we're just all speculating, but
I also
that's
want to
kind
put
of
it
my
out
2
there.
cents on that.
I watched the F2 race this weekend and he got 8th place. So like, I don't know about the second coming to Max Verstappen, but Max didn't get 8th in fucking anything.
I don't know. I'm sure there was something he got 8th in. Maybe
yeah,
like
the
long
8th
jump.
grade.
Long jump, maybe?
From 7th to 8th to 9th grade. Like
a high school like track meet or something. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
All right, boys. Well, we are winding down this episode. Looking forward to Monaco. But of course, we cannot end an episode without our favorite game. Name that sponsor. Drew, you got any music for us?
Name that sponsor. Beep, 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 beep. Say name that sponsor.
Thank you very much. You guys all know how it works. I'm going to name a sponsor. You're going to name the team that it is on and also what that company does. I've looked back a little bit. We've got a scorecard now, which is great. Drew is currently in the lead with 4 points. Thomas and Ed are tied with 1 each. Mind you, this is just the past 2 weeks. I still need to go back and find the rest of the scores, but they probably aren't that impressive. So the first one is Udemy. Udemy
Udemy
or
is
Udemy.
No, Udemy, I'm going to say, is a money transferring service, and I think it's on Alpine.
Okay.
I'm gonna say Red Bull Racing, Bulls Visa Cash App, and I'm gonna say it's like a subscription food healthy meal plan thing.
Ed?
I'm going to say Williams, and it is a company that it's a SaaS company that does like tutorials and a place where people can have like knowledge base or things that they can read through.
Like a coaching program?
Yeah, something like that.
Fucking hell, you took a long way to get there.
Well, it's not really a coaching program, but I'm going to give Ed those points because it's basically an online platform, SaaS platform for creators to output content and create courses. So 1
Yes.
point for Ed, and they are on McLaren. There you go. 1 point on the board, 0 for the rest of you. The next sponsor is ASOS. ASOS.
Can I get the definition, please?
ASOS. ASOS of Switzerland.
Watch company Aston Martin.
Okay.
I'm going to go pick Sauber, and it is a like a food restaurant, kitchen manufacturer or something. I don't know.
Okay.
Alpine Clothing Company. Or yeah, clothing, lifestyle, apparel company.
Okay, well, we'll have to decide how to score this one. ASOS is a premium cycling equipment and apparel company, so we'll give 1 point to Ed. And they are on Stake F1 Kick Sauber, whatever they're called. We got a
Get it,
point
boy.
for Ed. Got a point for Drew. 2 points for Ed today.
Okay, this guy's rocking right now.
Right, someone's been doing their homework. Thomas, buddy, it's time for you to step up. So I'm a little torn on how to. You know what? I'm a little torn on this one. The next sponsor is Neft. Neft. Neft.
I'm gonna go with an NFT company, and it is on Mercedes.
Okay.
I would say Mercedes. No, sorry. Aston Martin. They are a blockchain solutions company.
Aston Martin, like a digital creation software, like for images or like branding, something like that.
You're all wrong. All got zeros. Neft is a great tasting, smooth, top shelf quality rye vodka distilled in small batches. It's vodka
Okay.
worth sipping. No dressing up or watering down required. And they are on Visa Cash App, Red Bull.
Back to form.
Back to form. Although
There you go.
So I chose that one because it was a bit of a softball because the sponsor is technically listed as Neft Vodka, but for the purposes of the game, I removed the vodka part. Is that fair or not fair?
That's fair.
That's fair.
That's
fair.
That's
That's
fair because I feel like that would just give it away.
Yeah, it would give it away.
Like it would just give me like a giveaway for like 1 point.
1 point each.
So
yeah.
I just removed the vodka part.
That's fair. No, I'm okay. We all
right.
got 0 anyway, so it's perfect.
There we go. So today, Ed with 2 points, Drew with 1. Thomas needs to do a little bit of homework on his Formula One livery, 0. So right now we have our totals as Drew 5, Thomas 1, and Ed 3 points. The race is on
The race is on.
for the Name That Sponsor Championship. Wait until you guys see the trophy.
Okay.
It's going to be epic.
As long as you don't order it from Fiverr, we should be fine.
All right, boys. That was a lot of fun. This has been another episode of F1 True North. Thank you guys for listening. Don't forget to rate, subscribe, tell your friends, join the Discord. We'll be back next week with a recap of Monaco and looking forward to the Canadian Grand Prix. That's it for us for now. Ciao for now.
Peace.
It's lights out and away we go.